Hi guys, so I'm back with an updated dungeon build. Now we've had the patch notes, it's been out for a while. We've gone through the changes and what you kind of need to run when it comes to doing dungeons and challenge dungeons, especially when it comes to being a free-to-play or a pay-to-win player. I've got two setups that I'm going to go through with you. I'll show you the setups and then I'll run for a dungeon with my big setup when it comes to my 3,500 resonance setup that I use, which does a hell of a lot of damage in dungeons. And then you will get to see kind of what I do. When it comes to the free-to-play version, I will just show you the setup that I would use. I've got the gems in that equipped already, and you will see as I bring up the screen in a moment. But as always, if you like the content I bring when it comes to Necromancer and Diablo Immortal, don't forget, like and subscribe to the channel. Join the Discord. We have plenty of chats in there when it comes to what to play, how to play, different classes. There's everything in the Discord you'd ever need. And if you want to support the channel, you know, we've got the memberships there, so, and that all goes in there to, you know, helping me, you know, continue doing what I do. So let's get into it. So what do you need when it comes to the dungeon build nowadays? And as I open this up, you will see that I don't have any gems equipped. I've taken all of them out apart from the, you know, the tourmalines, bringing us down to the 3k-ish secondary attributes, and you can see 1665 when it comes to the resonance. Now, what gems are we running? What gear are we running? What set items are we running? Okay, there's not much changed from when I put out a video a few weeks ago when it comes to the build we were running then, before we knew about all the changes that were coming. And this is why I wanted to do an updated video. So, we are using Studied Menace, the same. It now causes Corpse Lance to put a decay on your enemies, which is going to be deleted by Raving Silence, which we're still using. Unfilled Grave, this one changed. So this one used to be where absorbing or you consuming corpses would increase your damage done and decrease your damage taken. But they actually removed the second part of that, so the damage taken has been removed. You now only increase your damage done when you consume corpses. The bone armor cooldown is still there, but the defensive is gone. Some people have noticed it, I noticed it for sure. Incision Cusp increases your critical hit damage by 30.4%. We kind of all want to be using this, and any increase in damage when it comes to crit hit damage and crit hit chance, you should be taken every single time. Raving Silence, we know what this does. The Grim Scythe now triggers all conditional damage on the targets to hits, causing them to instantly take the remaining damage. So it applies, it takes it away, it causes all the damage in one hit. Defiling Swarm, Grim Scythe gives you these swirling scythes that orbit you, deal damage, and generate loads of corpses. We're using Departed Appetite still, which is for Vortex of Bones. For Corpse Lance now consumes corpses near you that create a Vortex of Bones surrounding you that damages enemies. We're then using the changed one, Pleasant Venom. We're using this because we no longer need to use Devouring Golem to give us that loss of control effect on our targets. So we use Poison Golem to actually give us an increase in damage when it comes to the corrosive acid that it lands when it jumps and does this blast wave of this acid. It damages nearby enemies and causes them to take additional damage. Now that additional damage is critical because that is an armor break, and it is really, really good. When it comes to the second offhand, Corrosive Slab, as usual, Command Golem makes nearby enemies vulnerable, causing them to take increased damage of 15.2%. So, set items, they've stayed exactly the same. 2-piece Vifus to increase the beneficial effects to 30%. 4-piece Agments, 30% chance to gain additional duration on any ignite status, and then you've got a 15% chance to attach an ignite status to an enemy when you're dealing with your damage with your primary or your skills, and that deals damage over time, which is wiped out by Raving Silence, just like it was before. Now we've got 2-piece Barons, as we did before, increases the duration of all them harmful effects you're applying, and obviously takes them out all with Raving Silence in one blast. Now when it comes to our gems, we're using Berserker's Eye in this free-to-play version, rank 10 to increase your damage and your crit hit chance. We're also using the new one, Spectre Glass, which is great because it does this, shatters enemies' armor for 2 seconds when you do a critical on them. and that increases your damage they take from you by 24%. And it says from you, so this is not party wide, and it increases your critical hit chance by 3% on them. Now, this obviously goes up, these good percentages go up as you rank it up. This is a rank 8 version. Now, this is a bit important, so cannot occur on the same target more than once every 6 seconds. So in dungeons, when we're running through them, every target will have this applied to them, and every target will die very quickly. So this will be up 100% of the time, so you're just gaining an extra 3% crit hit chance against all targets running through the dungeon. Now, when it comes to the boss should go down relatively quickly, so this should be up, you know, as a very high percentage. Now in raids, this will be different. Raids, this won't, or especially Gauntlet. Raids, not so much, we do get them down fairly quickly, but Gauntlet, you probably want to be using something other than this gem. When it comes to the next gem, we're using Mother's Lament for, again, the increase in crit hit chance when you get that 20% chance to gain that buff. Then we're using Mourn Skull. And this one here is to increase your damage again for 6 seconds between 18 and 36%, depending on how many targets were hit by your Lich King doing them spirit things. Now we've got Misery Elixir, which is going to increase the duration of all harmful effects that you apply to your enemies. And then the damage you deal to enemies suffering from them harmful effects is increased by 2%. So another 2% increase in damage plus a 24% increase in duration means that the Raving Silence is just going to be hitting like a truck. Then we're using one that we don't use very often, especially as a pay-to-win player or someone that pays money into the game, but Chained Death is great for free-to-play. It just literally states it increases the damage of your attacks by 1.8% per target hit, up to a maximum of 9% at 5 targets. Now, bearing in mind, this is only rank 5, so this would increase as well, but that is just a general increase in damage. Pain Clasp, another good one that's for the free-to-play players. You're going to gain a crit increase in damage dealt by 24% to certain enemies suffering with your continual damage and effects. So every time you apply additional damage and effect to the targets, you're going to be doing 24% increased damage to them, which again is just going to add to all the extra damage you can possibly do. Also, you gain a 6% movement speed, and that is helpful because we're not using any 5 stars in this free-to-play version, so we're not using Bloodsoaked Jade, although you could add it in if you do have it. The same with Roiling Consequences, add that in if you have it. Now, the last gem as a free-to-play that I've put on here is Entropic Well. This works great with what we're using in this build. So the skill damage is increased by 18% and the skill attack speed is increased by 4%. So definitely go ahead and use that. Now, the other thing we should really talk about when it comes to this is the changes that we've just had. We've had new Affix gear come to the game, class Affix gear. Now, the reason we're swapping away from Devouring Golem to Poison Golem is simply because Grim Scythe, when you have it as a class affix on a piece of gear now, provides a slow. Now that slow is, let me just go to my gear so you can see it. That's a Bone Armor one. Grim Scythe, here we go. Slows an enemy by 15% for 6 seconds. Now if you stack this up to 4, that would be a 60% slow for 6 seconds. You don't need it to be that high in dungeons, you just want one of these on your gear. One of them is enough for our loss of control effects to be applied, because this is always being applied. There's no cooldown on it, it just applies. Done. Straight up. You know, it's great. Definitely be using it. Make sure you have one. The other thing we want to be making sure we have on our gear is Corpse Lance times 2. This will increase your movement speed by 20%. Now, here you'll be able to get enough movement speed from this to be able to get 30 or 40 or 50% movement speed, possibly even 60 depending on what gems you are using and what level of the game you're at. But any movement speed as a free-to-play player is definitely needed. Definitely take it if you get the option to. Now, the only other one you want to be taking when it comes to class gear is what you see here, Bone Armor. So this is another brand new one to the game. Bone Armor, while active, your 10% of your damage you take is distributed to all nearby summons. Now we're using a golem. This is not a permanent golem, but I think it's got up about it's going to be up most of the time. It's got a 4-second cooldown, and then it's going to be back up. So this will help. As in, we lost our damage reduction on our unfilled grave, but we gain it back by using 2 of these, 20%. Now these stack up to 4, which will give you a 40% damage reduction. So if you really are suffering, go for 4. You know, you may as well. It keeps you alive, which means you're doing more damage. The only other thing you want to be making sure that's on most of your gear is crit hit chance. Crit hit chance is very important. Get it as high as you can. You've never got enough. I hear this, I see this question a lot. How much is enough? Just keep going until you can get it as high as you possibly can. Get crit hit chance on every piece of gear that you can possibly get it on. It's worth it. The same with beneficial effects. You know, you need that beneficial effect duration on your gear because it's that good. So, when it comes to cursed properties, the other one I will mention is this wired 6. This is great. So after you kill an enemy, release a surge of lightning that jumps 6 times between nearby enemies and deals 60% of your damage to them. Additionally, your damage you deal to the enemies that are hit by this surge is increased by 18%. You know, this can't occur more than once every 9 seconds, but another 18% increased damage. And then Lashed I just used simply because, you know, Lashed is a 30-second cooldown and it does damage over time. So, what else? Have we missed anything? I don't think we have. Familiars, Lingering Wounds. We all know that familiars are very difficult to come across when it comes to the ones you want. But you do definitely want to make sure if you have got a familiar that's got Lingering Wounds that you're using it in dungeons. Because it's just going to give you an increase in damage. Straight up. So as you will see here, I'm at 3.2. And then I've got 5.3 and 5.3 for the potency in the armor pen. Armor 3.2 and resistance 3.1. I don't really need any more than that. I think it would be unnecessary. I'm at 46.2k combat rating. When it comes to gems that I'm using, I am using the same Berserker's Eye, the same Spectre Glass, the same Mother's Lament, the same Mornskull. So them 4 are identical. Then when it comes to my 5 stars, Bloodstoked Jade to get the increase in damage while at maximum health. I'm then using Bottled Hope for increase in movement speed and a buff to increase my damage and get a skill cooldown of 3%. I'm then using Roiling Consequences. Now we all know this is a really good gem. It gives you an increase in crit hit chance by 30% and then causes a burn on the enemies. Now I am using the new 5 star, which I've only got to rank 4 so far, but this grants you a buff which also gives you an increase in size and an increase in skill damage and skill range. So you can literally read it on here. Grant yourself a buff, so Bone Armor or Grim Scythe. By doing so, it grants you Colossal Strength for 6 seconds, increasing the skill damage by 27% currently at this level, and whilst also increasing your size and range. Additionally, Colossal Strength also grants you immunity to knockback for 1.3 seconds. This cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. So I do plan on getting this to at least rank 5, because then it definitely outshines Entropic Well. So you can just replace Entropic Well straight away with this one if you are planning on leveling this up. As you can see, I'm not using Pain Class, but don't think it's needed, although you could bring in a Pain Class and swap out Mothers if you feel your crit hit chance is high enough. Everything else is exactly the same as what I just showed you in the free-to-play. So, let's do a dungeon so you can see what this build can actually do. If we can get a dungeon quick enough. We did. Now I've had some insane burst damage on this. I think the highest burst damage I see was doing... I can't even remember what dungeon it was now, but I think it was like 32 million burst. It was absolutely incredible. But doing these dungeons, it's all about getting to the mobs first. And doing the first bit of damage. If you apply damage first, then you're going to be getting the most damage out to see if you can hit the top of the leaderboards. And that's what it's all about. People always say, how are you top? How are you top? Well, it's all about getting there first. You know, applying your damage over time effects before anyone else does. And then you will see that you can do a lot of damage. You'll see your true potential when it comes to doing dungeons. You know, you can go and play on a target dummy and see what your damage is. But the target dummy, when it comes to doing dungeons, which needs burst, that opening 10-second burst is what dungeon needs, because that way you can really see a true representation of your burst damage. Whereas in Raise it's completely different. You want to see your sustained damage, especially for Gauntlet. If you can have high sustained damage, then you're going to have no problem getting through the dungeon or through the raid. Where doing dungeons, you need the burst damage. You want things to die within seconds of you touching them, because in that way you're progressing through the dungeon faster. You're gonna have high damage. You know, there's so many benefits to just running through a dungeon and being able to blast them like this. You know, you're going to end up getting more gear per hour, more mats per hour, more gold per hour. You know, all the benefits are there. So I recommend anyone that has been running the Devouring Golem build to swap over to Pleasant Venom, get your Poison Golem out, get one affix of the class gear for Brim Scythe, and just get in and have a blast. It definitely provides you a much needed kind of damage increase, and it actually benefits the party as well, that you're doing more damage, one, and providing kind of the armor break for the party to be able to use when it comes to using Poison Golem. It's just absolutely brilliant. As you can see, no problems here whatsoever. I wish we could see the overall damage from everyone though, instead of just the highest and then your damage. I wish we could see, because there's only 4 people in here. It wouldn't take long for them to add in the other 3 people's damage so we can actually have a true comparison of what's going on. You know, you can see my hits here, they're not quite hitting the million, but there's plenty of, you know, high 900,000s. We don't need to go to the shield to be protected from the flames. We're just going to kill it. And there we have it, guys. That is the very slight updated dungeon build. Use it. It's great. You know, Poison Golem has definitely now kind of, in my mind, at the front of all the golems we should be using when it comes to, you know, doing dungeons. There's no other way kind of about that. It provides us with doing extra damage to the target as well as, you know, for the party. Any questions that you have about the build or anything you want to add, any changes you think that I should make, feel free, like always, throw them in the comments, jump on the Discord, come and talk to us. There's a few of us in there that definitely do a lot of theory crafting, and we're currently talking about kind of a golem and doing new kind of changes to the golem tank build for PvP, and there's going to be lots of chatter about that hopefully over the next few weeks once we've figured out everything we need to figure out. So, you know, stay tuned for that one. If you haven't subscribed already and you want to know kind of about the golem, definitely subscribe, and you will hear about that hopefully in the next couple of weeks. As always, become a member if you want to become a member, support the channel like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But other than that, we'll leave it there for today, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.